On day 7 of the Olaska trial, Daniel Olaska took the stand. After explaining his life before crime, Olaska told his story of the night. He said he arrived at the bar early with his friend, and a little later, he verified that he met a pretty girl named Sarah Schwinn, and they talked, drank, and danced. He was eventually kindly rejected. He also admitted talking to Reynolds, but he said he never threatened him with a knife. He eventually made it over to a booth, and by that point in the night, probably had 10 to 12 glasses of red wine. He said Gina Gargaro actually picked a fight with him, not vice versa. Soon after, Willie Hayes sat down, and the men shook hands and talked. After that, he sensed something was wrong when Willie started to raise his voice and use curse words. He admitted they were both drunk, and they stood up and started yelling. Then someone stiff-armed him back to his seat. He said he asked for help from the surrounding big guys, and those guys settled Willie down. But only minutes later, Willie was up and upset again. He felt Willie was going to hurt him, and he had no one to turn to, so he reached for his knife and punched at him. He then left the booth and walked 5 to 10 steps when somebody grabbed him around the neck and on the shoulder. He panicked, thinking it was Willie. So he poked the arm with his knife, spun around, and then punched forward with his knife at Sean Wild, not Willie Hayes. During cross-examination, the state played 2 tapes of Olaska and his father on the phone just 2 and 3 months ago. In the tapes, Olaska is heard saying, quote, he can only remember bits and pieces after being on the stairs with the police. And when asked if he remembered the fight with Gina Gargaro, he said, quote, no, not at all, and it would be a total guess. And his dad said, if you can manufacture a memory out of it, it's going to be necessary. The state then played another phone call, this time of Olaska with his brother-in-law, Andrew, who is in law school. Andrew started the conversation saying, quote, I don't know if your dad told you or not, but I've been working on a story. He then continued to tell Olaska a similar story of a man named Nick who was at a table. A giant man then sat next down to him and eventually made Nick very uncomfortable. The man was obviously upset, yelling something in Russian, and when he stood up, Nick was scared. The man slapped Nick, who turned, and there was big men everywhere coming for him. Nick defended himself, left the table, and that's all he could remember. The phone call ended with Andrew saying, quote, how's that so far? And Olaska responded, pretty good. Just before Olaska testified, 2 witnesses, including the reverend at the church Olaska attended, talked about Olaska's character before the night of the murder, saying he was, quote, gentle, kind, peaceful, law-abiding, and not aggressive at all. Daniel Olaska is being charged with 7 counts of first-degree murder, including the death of local teacher Sean Wild. Naperville News 17 has been following the case since 2012 and will continue to update you nightly during the trial. I'm Kristen Gitchell for Naperville News 17.